Welcome, team, to episode 6 of the Stu and Marty podcast. I'm Marty. Joining me, of course, is Stu. How you going, Stu?
Marty, I'm very well. I am seriously looking forward to today. I'm very excited about our guest. I know he'll do a fantastic job, but no pressure, of course.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm pumped as well. Although I'm a little bit nervous too, because as you said, this is the first time we're going to have a special guest joining us. So I guess, Stu, you need to be on your best behaviour.
Yeah, well, you know, we can make and break careers in a heartbeat, us two, so like, including our own, so we'll be good.
The other thing you need to be careful of is we had Renata on last episode and she was pretty good, mate. She's nipping at your heels, so watch yourself.
Yeah. I noticed she didn't say she's nipping at your heels, but anyway, we'll move along.
I'm in control here.
Okay, excellent.
So as we said, this is the first episode of the podcast that we're going to have a special guest on. And previously in the earlier episodes, we covered topics like being proactive, building your influence and building goals. And this is where our guest fits in perfectly. So his name is Simon Thompson. He's currently the Chief Operating Officer for Collective Wellness, which is the organisation with franchises of Anytime Fitness and Xtend Barre. Plus, in addition to that, in a previous life or era or age, we'll call it, Simon, also known as Tomo, is an Olympian and Commonwealth Games athlete in the sport of triathlon. So, Simon, mate, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming.
Great to be here. Thanks, fellas. And it's good to know I'm the first guest. I thought that you guys were professionals, but I can set the bar for future guests without too much worry. So, great to be here. Thanks for inviting me. Appreciate it.
We absolutely lied and said that we've been doing this for years and we've had everything. You can't get out.
Completely tricked me. Yeah.
Well, we also went away from the concept, Tomo, that we said we'll always leave the best to last. We're going to go the best first.
Yeah.
And you were our first pick. You know that.
Yeah. We'll stick with that until you finish the recording.
Yeah. Let's see how we go.
Yeah.
So Tomo, obviously, you and I have known each other for a while. We're both Canberra boys. We went to the same school, although you were a few years above me. But we met. Yeah. Well, yes.
He's an old bastard.
You can tell by looking. Is that what you're going to say? Yeah. Appreciate it.
Yeah, here we go. This is starting to well for everyone.
You're looking amazingly well, Tomo, for your age. Excellent, buddy.
Yeah. Thanks.
So we obviously crossed paths again in recent years with the work that I've done with Trek Bikes, and you were previously with Trek. You were there for quite a while. If you want to sort of maybe give our listeners a bit of a background on, I guess, what you've done professionally and also in your sporting career that we've missed, it'd be great for them to understand.
Yeah, sure. I mean, long story short, I had about 10 years as a professional triathlete. So we'll probably talk a little bit more about how that sort of happened, but it just fell into that. It wasn't something by design, but was fortunate to have 10 years as a full-time professional in that sport.
Wow.
Made a relatively smooth transition in hindsight into life after sport, and found myself fairly quickly with Trek bicycles, and was extremely fortunate with my time there at Trek. They're a fantastic company and a company that I still hold quite dearly. You know, I learned so much and grew so much in my time there, and had a lot of opportunities. So I had about 6 different roles over my 8 years there,
okay.
And all of them except one was a new position, a new role. So for a company that's $1 billion company, global, really big, it was actually quite dynamic on the inside. There's always a lot happening, and a lot of shifts and changes as they're adapting and growing. And I was really fortunate to get some opportunities within the company there. I started off in marketing when we just started in Australia, and it was like a startup phase where it was a case of all hands on deck, and
yep.
Everyone was doing all sorts of roles to drive the business forward. And then I was given an opportunity to go to the US and work in the sports marketing side of the business with the racing department, which was thrilling for me off the back of my sporting career. I ended up in a role which I could never have designed myself to be as perfect for what I wanted and needed in my professional career, and the way that developed was really brilliant. I had a really great time doing that for about 4 years, and then a couple more opportunities when I came back to Australia again as well. So. Really enjoyed my time there. I did have an opportunity to move into a startup company in the fitness space as well, which was a company named Zwift, that has been doing particularly well during the last couple of months during the global pandemic quarantine. So that is a company which is involved in indoor training and essentially things you can training online you can do from your home. So as you can imagine, lots of people jumping on their bikes and treadmills, running and riding, using Zwift over the last couple of months. So, but yeah, very good opportunity. It was, while it was a tech company and not my background, it was very much a marketing engine. So really learned a lot about marketing and just growth, in that space. And I only had 12 months there before this opportunity with the Collective Wellness Group came up. And again, it was just it was an opportunity that was too good to pass up, and made a shift out of the specific cycling, running, triathlon space where I'd sort of spent a lot of all of my adult life to the wider fitness industry, and really found my home here with Collective Wellness Group.
Yeah, so and as we mentioned earlier, Collective Wellness, they're the group that has the franchise or the business Anytime Fitness and Xtend Barre. Anytime Fitness, I mean, most listeners will have heard of that. They are literally everywhere. I mean, how many franchises are there now in Australia alone?
515 across Australia. So
wow.
Yeah, pretty much one in 50 Australians are a member of one of our clubs or studios.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Cool. And then Xtend Barre, again, for me, who I am, I'm not that familiar with it, but I do actually know my sister-in-law teaches, and she's an instructor of Xtend Barre, so I do have some idea of it, but my flexibility is about as good as a piece of timber, so that's something that I'd ever be good at or would ever bother trying, to be fair, so yeah.
Yep, you're not alone there, Marty, don't worry. Yeah, a lot of guys think they can come in there and muscle one of those classes and get shown up really quickly.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, cool. No worries. So, and yeah, I mean, Trek is a great company, as you know, and even in the last episode, I actually mentioned I've got a great relationship with John Burke, the owner. He's the one that I send him an email saying, "Hey, I read that book you told me about," and he writes back saying, "Great, glad you enjoyed it. Here's your next book." I'm like, "Thanks very much for that. Appreciate it." Absolutely. Yeah. But even the racing team stuff must have been really, really exciting for you, particularly. So.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I don't need to go into it too much, but yeah, the company, I guess, being their size, had the ability to do things a little bit differently, and it was just the timing was right when I was there, where we had a lot of sponsorships across the different types of cycling sports. So there were 7 different programs that Trek was involved in. You had road cycling, 4 different mountain bike programs. So mountain biking has a lot of different categories. There's downhill, enduro, cross country, and more of like a slope style. The Red Bull kids that do lots of flips and flying in the air. There was cyclocross and triathlon program, and so we sort of had sponsorships that were all over the place when I started. But we made the big decision to own the road cycling team, which was a big step forward at the time. No other brands in the industry were sort of taking that step, and so by doing that, the staff and the athletes were essentially employees of the company. It was a massive mindset shift around what their contribution was. No longer was it just a sponsor that they kind of was a distraction to them doing what they needed to do. Where they occasionally had to go and do photo shoots or do some testing or product testing, things like that. Yeah. They eventually realised that they were part of something much bigger than what they were doing was contributing to something much more. And in the end, we ended up owning 5 of those 7 programs. And,
wow.
Yeah, it was really effective. So we ended up with a department which essentially had about 120 people, both athletes and staff, that were dedicated to pushing that part of the business forward.
You were like, I mean, in F1, Formula One, we would call that a works team. So you were the works team of the bike. Well, let's call it Tour de France. I mean, realistically, everything.
Essentially, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, wow, that's exciting, mate. Must have been a great time.
Yeah, it was brilliant. Yeah.
Oh, I'm interested, Tomo. I've not heard your story before. I'm always fascinated with people who have your level of success, who they make it sound like it was an easy walk. And it was, you've used a couple of times where I was just lucky, and I go, I was in a professional triathlete for 10 years, and that was just luck. I don't get it, And, one of my conversations I got when I was a young athlete, certainly not at your level, but a coach once said to me, good players make their own luck.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about when you got started? Because I'm not going to quite believe you that you just fell into triathlon sport and it just so happened that I became a world-class athlete by accident. I'm not sure that's true. Tell me a little bit about that transition of how did you become one and what did it take to stay there?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question, Stuart. I think I know you touched on this previously, but I think it sort of, for me, I say I fell into it because I never had a desire to become a professional athlete. I never considered myself to be someone at the level that could go to an Olympic Games or anything like that. I did triathlon at school because I was drawn to it. It sort of suited my abilities. But I love team sports. I played basketball, played Australian football, played volleyball. I just love sports. But I did triathlon. It wasn't a big sport when I was at school. And when I ended up coming back into it, and I found myself having sort of, as a 18, 19-year-old, was sort of competing at a reasonably high level there in the ACT. And just I found my coach, who was my coach for my whole career. And before I knew it, he'd sort of registered me in some elite races with some professional athletes that I admired and watched growing up. And I guess I got to the level where I was able to compete against those athletes. And for me, when I was in that period, as I said, I felt like an imposter. Here I was competing against, these heroes of mine. But I guess the belief that I had in being a right to be there and give myself the ability to stand on the start line and believe in the possibility, it came from, I guess, the work that I'd done and the preparation that I'd done. And I sort of quickly learned to build confidence and build belief in myself based on the fact that I knew what the other guys were doing in training, and I just thought I would out-train them and I would just do more than they did or do it better than they did.
Yeah. And
so that allowed me to build belief in the possibility that if I could do that in training, I can do it on the actual competition field. And so it was a little while ago. I mean, it was a long time ago, but eventually when you get that result and you do achieve that time where you beat some of the, and it probably didn't happen that I won a race necessarily, but I might have finished 5th or 6th, and there were guys that were behind me that were guys that I would have never believed that I could have beaten before. And I was like, well, if I've done it then, who's to say that I couldn't beat the other guys at different times? And so you kind of just build that trust and belief in your abilities. And that's certainly how it worked for me. And then once I cracked that victory, then all of a sudden it's a massive mindset shift. Now it's a case of whatever goal you set, it's now a case of a matter of when. It's not if. And so you start to believe in the fact that, well, I did, that I could achieve something. And so up until that point, early in my career, I was just really, I didn't want to say what if. I was just chasing this dream because it'd be a shame not to give it a go and see where what level I could get to. But at that point, I never set that big, hairy, audacious goal. There was never that thing. It was just a case of what's the progression that I can continue to make to fulfill my capacity in it. And so that before I knew it, I was putting university on hold, and I was, my whole life revolved around the sport. So it wasn't like I set out to go and do this, but it just kind of, that's where I ended up going. And so, I think that sort of level of progression, I think probably most people can relate to that. I think, most people are in things and they want to try and get to the, improve themselves or get to, the best outcome they can. But I don't necessarily think people have that really big outcome. And for me, like the Olympic Games, I didn't sort of set out to necessarily win a gold medal, but I remember in August 2000 and sitting in the grandstand at the Sydney Olympic Games, and I just had my first season overseas. So I just started racing professionally. And I remember sitting in the grandstand, sponsor New Balance at the time had got me a ticket to the grandstand. And I remember sitting there watching all of these guys file out as they called their name out to the start line. And these are guys that I'd all competed against. Yeah. And I just thought, wow, how amazing is that?
Yeah.
I want to be here in 4 years' time. I want to be one of those guys that have been called out. And that was the first time for me that I solidified that massive singular goal that was, that was very different to what I'd ever experienced before. And I don't know if many people get to experience that, where you have that pursuit of your passion in that singular purpose, which is so powerful. And I'm so grateful that I had that opportunity to be able to set that goal. And it's not like it was automatic from there. Okay, now I'm going to, I know exactly what I have to do. It probably took a couple of years of progressing in the sport before, sometime around
early
2003, when it's like it became, for me to get to that goal, I sort of had there was a couple of milestones that I needed to tick along the way, and that's where I started to really plan that out.
What I really like about this, and Stu and I talk about this quite a bit, and you're, again, that big, massive goal, and we talk about goals don't have to be that big, but what I really like is that the infinite mindset you've got, not the finite. It's like, well, if I beat this person, I've made it. Or if I make this race, I've made it. My success at the moment is this. My success is coming 10th, but beating the 5 guys that I just beat that I thought I never could do that. So that small goal, and then that story is amazing, mate, because you've just basically built that straight into all these little tiny minor goals that have gone, oh, hang on a minute, now I actually know what my big goal is, and that's the 2004 Olympic Games. So, and then even then it was, 3 years later when you've gone, okay, these are the milestones I need to hit in the next year to 18 months to get that big goal. So you still didn't, it's still that infinite mindset of going, okay, it's never going to end. I'm always going to have something to progress towards. So, mate, holy shit, great story. Congratulations. Well done.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it's amazing that it worked out that way. Like, in hindsight, looking back, and it wouldn't have mattered if it didn't. Like, it was I still, on that, by making that commitment to that and going on that journey, I still achieved what I set out to do in trying to fulfill my potential. So there was nothing lost in that, so that's the way I kind of look back now. And if people ask me about it, it's like, you've got nothing to lose by setting yourself, putting that line in the sand for something big out there. But, you've got so much to gain by putting everything into that, and I think you talked a little bit previously around, the people failing on goals when it's not their own, and I think a lot of people in work find themselves in those places. And I feel like I've been very fortunate that I've always been in areas my whole adult life where I'm really passionate about it, and I've found myself in roles where I'm passionate. So even if it's in my working career where it's not necessarily my own company, or is that I'm vested emotionally in where the company's going and the why.
Yep.
And that allows me to push myself in that same capacity.
Yep.
And I just say to people, if you don't feel that, then, no one's holding a gun against your head to stay there.
Yeah.
It's up to you to go and find that, what you are passionate about. And it might mean that you're going to have to take a shift in a way which is hard. It hurts because it might not have the same pay salary, or it might not have the same benefits, or it might be difficult in your constraints with family or things like that. But ultimately, if you really want to realize your own potential, unless you've got yourself in that space, you're going to really struggle.
Yeah, that's cool.
We've talked, Tomo, a couple of times about, for people, you've got a choice inside your head. You can have same or you can have better. And for me, 1% is better, 10% is better. And, we don't have to be 100% better tomorrow, because I can't get you who, like on a 100K ride, you might have done a set time, and then the bloke comes up to you and goes, I need you to take 10 minutes of that tomorrow. That's unrealistic.
100%.
In the extreme. And so, but I could come to you and say, if we can take off 2 seconds per K, you've got to go from 10th to 8th. Is that something you want to do? And so it's that bite-sized chunk piece that becomes a really crucial bit.
Yeah, I love the way you talked about that when you're talking about different life areas and getting from a 2 to a 3. I would say exactly the same thing. If I take a step back to that period of time when I had that Olympic gold medal as my goal, when I woke up in the morning when the alarm goes off at 4:30, I'm not thinking about an Olympic gold medal. Like, that's just, it's too abstract. It's too far away. I needed to break it down into, what do I need to do this year in order to get to that point? And then in that respect, how do I then, what am I doing this month? What am I doing this week? What am I doing on Tuesday when the alarm goes off at 5 a.m? I need to be in the pool at 6 a.m, because that's part of my plan to get to where I'm going. I'm not thinking Olympic gold medal. I'm thinking I've got a swim session I have to do this morning, and that's all I need to focus on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We've talked a couple of times, Tom, about, once you understand the why, then you've got to have the what and the how, the structure and the process. How did you go about doing that for you?
Yeah, and I think that it's that process. I think exactly what I just articulated there. For me, I guess I was of an age where I could be quite selfish and sort of say, my life was about putting everything into that at that point, and I was fortunate to have the people around me that were also bought into that to that same goal that I had, and so the why was maybe not as clear as it probably should have been. It was, why not, almost, and so as opposed to why, and so it was out there, but a case of, it was then around like, well, I'm just going to go for this because I'm young and now's my chance. If I don't do it now, I won't get another go at it. So maybe it's a little bit different than I never really considered it like that before. I wasn't thinking why back then, but yeah, it quickly became about the what and the how, and I became obsessed about that. I loved the planning phase. I loved the periodization focus, and triathlon is a sport of compromise. Like it's the three disciplines don't necessarily work in harmony together with the human body, and so in order to get yourself to where you're peaking, I found that you're always having to make a compromise on one thing to make a gain there, and then the game is to get them all up as close to the top as possible at the time that you needed it. And so it was always a moving target, trying to figure out where you go up and down in the different parts of the year to try and get you to that point. So I love that component of the sport.
And I guess a really important part of that would be the feedback. And we talk about this a lot. Like if you're going to set a goal or you're going to plan to achieve something, then you need to get feedback from somewhere. Clearly you said, you had a coach, the same coach all the way through. I'm guessing that was the main point of feedback for you. Would that be correct?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Ben Gathercole was my coach since end of 97 right through to when I retired and started 2010. And so, yeah, absolutely. And then, I was fortunate that he had the skill set. He'd been a lifelong coach from a family of, mother and father were both coaches. And so, he was well and truly at a high level when I came to him. And I guess the better we did and the more we started to achieve, the better resources and capabilities we were able to draw from as well. And so, I guess Ben's humility was that he, knew that he didn't know it all. And so he was willing to open up to other possibilities and other people, and we're able to draw from those as well. So, I think, in that kind of a environment, all the people around you are your feedback system, right to your parents and your partners, and as well as your training partners and things like that as well. So, it's very difficult to have that 30,000 foot view when you're kind of in the weeds of it all the time. So, I think it'd be impossible to do that on your own. I don't know how people can self-coach in that space.
So, Tom, in the light of that feedback, how often would you sit down and get some structured form of feedback around your performance or your activities or your process?
Yeah, it wasn't something that was formalised at that time, and I remember that I guess Triathlon Australia and the relationship Benny and I had was quite different to a lot of the other athletes in the sport and the other coaches. We were very collaborative in our approach. So we were constantly talking through what we were doing and how we're approaching it. So it wasn't really formalised in that respect, and so. I guess the difficulty was, at certain times, given that it was at the times, the communication it wasn't like now where you've just got immediate visibility on how athletes are performing no matter where they are in the world. You know, you've got access to data. There's nowhere to hide. But at the same time, you know, that it was, you know, I'd probably go to a, you know, I remember in 2000, the first year that I was in France, I remember going to a phone box once every 3 weeks and putting in my 20 euros so I could give Benny a call and let him know how I'm going. You know, like I probably would have been emailing across some of the sessions that I'd done from my training diary and things like that. But as a coach, he wasn't really able to have visibility on me the way that if I was back in Canberra, you know, in the pool and every day and on the bike and running. So, you know, he was limited in his ability to provide that feedback based on the tools available to us at the time.
Yeah. I love it. Wow. And that's the thing now. I mean, things have changed, right? And you've got data straight away. You'd be downloading data straight to an app or to wherever, and he'd be just going over it and reviewing it. So I really like the collaborative approach that you guys had, and it's got to be a two-way thing. We always talk about in that feedback loop, you've got to be quite cautious on who you choose for that, because the feedback sometimes is going to hurt. You know, you would turn around and say, you did a shit job there. Like you didn't pay, you weren't focused, you weren't paying attention to what you had to do. And you have to be held responsible for that. So, yeah, I mean, I guess in coming off a race that didn't go the way you thought it was going to go, there could be an element of emotion to that, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, I think probably one of my downfalls was I probably was a little bit too headstrong in our relationship too. And I probably used that, the fact that I was overseas and wasn't there to sort of, you know, was probably told to do one thing, but did extra or did something and probably overcooked myself, to be honest, because I probably, you know, wasn't necessarily sticking to the program or trusting in the program as much and having a bit too much influence. Yep. Whereas I would have been better off having to say, nah, stop, you know, this is what you need to do. Yeah.
And I guess, you know, and as you moved from your professional athletic career into the side of your corporate and your business life, did the goals you set in your athletic career help in your corporate life as well?
Yeah, I think, you know, you've talked about that process around every day setting goals. And I think in business, that's really natural.
Yep.
You know, that you're always got KPIs and you're setting these targets and things like that. And I think where I found that we might go wrong a little bit more in business is it's just always a little bit more continual. And it's like, it's really important for leaders to do that breakdown process. You know, otherwise it just feels like this wheel that just never ends. You just constantly got this workload, you know, and you're constantly just sort of moving on to the next thing. And because you've got so many things happening concurrently, that maybe, you know, wins aren't celebrated enough or you're not recognizing progress. And I think as human beings, that's kind of, we thrive on progress, and it's essential in business that, you know, things which are a little bit more complicated are simplified and broken down a bit more.
Yeah, Stu and I talk about this a lot, and I used to do this when I was the GM at my old BMW dealership. Is I would say to people at the end of every day, what 3 things did you do well today? What do you want to fix, change, and improve for tomorrow? Because I never wanted people going home going, oh God, I was so busy today, but I didn't achieve anything, because the mindset, you're shot. And then you come back the next day and you're already a little bit defeated because you know what it's like. But we do achieve things throughout the day. And I think you're absolutely right. We don't do that enough in business as individuals, but as leaders especially as well. I think it's really important that we do.
And I see it compounded now, especially when people working from home, where, you know, your work doesn't stop. It's not like you can, at the end of the day doesn't finish as much like it used to. Like you said, you can't go, what have you done today? What have you improved? Go home and forget about it. Like it's just on constantly. And so I think people are starting to feel the fatigue of that now after a couple of months. And I think it's, as you said, it's critical to try and break that down a little bit more so that it gets a little bit more segmented.
Yeah.
The other bit, Tomo, you talk about is this importance of team. I've read some of your story. Tell us a little bit about the time when you came 11th, but the team came first and third. What was that about?
That was my favourite 11th place, my most satisfying 11th place that I got. That was an interesting experience, actually. It was, we didn't go into the Commonwealth Games. I didn't turn up in Melbourne that year expecting to play that role. And I guess a bit of context was that was 2006, 2004. Off the back of the Olympics, I kind of hit a purple patch in my career. I was really peaked in hindsight. That was the best level that I hit, and I think off the back of the Olympics in 12 or 13 races, I think I won 9 of them and was only off the podium once or something like that. So I sort of really kicked on into the Olympics and off the Olympics, and in early 2005, I was basically a shoo-in for the Commonwealth Games team, but got to the middle of 2005 and found myself all of a sudden injured. In France at training camp, injury in my back, didn't know what it was, but was sidelined for weeks and turned into months. And it was just an extremely frustrating time, and I ended up having an operation, and it all got fixed. But it meant that I was now coming out of recovering and rehabbing in December for a March Commonwealth Games. And so I'd kind of missed a lot of the selection that had taken place, and I ended up missing out on the team. And it was only because Greg Bennett, who was my teammate in Athens, because he got an injury, I got a late call-up in February. And I remember I'd just come off a 7th or 8th place at the World Cup in Doha, and being fast-tracked back to the Gold Coast, to the training camp to join the team. And so I probably went into the Commonwealth Games at about, say, 95 to 98% of where I had been previously. And it just sort of run out of runway to get myself to that next bit. It was unlike the Olympics, where I qualified in December for the August Games, and I had a 9-month runway to get myself ready for it. And so obviously excited to be in the team, but my game plan to get a medal was as the hierarchy in the Australian team realised was probably going to be counterproductive to the other 2 teammates, Brad and Robbo, who were in fine form, were easily sort of some of the favourites, and I had the potential to go and throw that out the window if I was to break away on the bike leg, take one of the Kiwis with me, and be quite happy to run through for a bronze or a silver potentially, but that's not what we were there to do. And so there was a number of conversations that took place at that time, and we ended up coming up with a plan which for me, at first I was a little taken back, but I was bought into it really quickly because, as I said, I had a team sport background and I knew where I was, and I loved the idea that we were going to be coming out and racing with this team plan that no one would have expected. And so essentially my role was to just protect the other 2 guys and get them off the bike at the front of the race in the best shape possible, to ensure that they could run for the medals. And I know that those two guys had the utmost belief in my ability to help to do that for them. And I remember as we walked out to the pontoon, and there was a couple of 100,000 people down in St Kilda for that game. It was just the 3 of us were just in such good spirits, and we were so relaxed, and I think those guys had never gone into a race anywhere near that level, having someone that was going to work for them and help them out. And so, and I think that meant that relaxation that they carried meant that my job was easy, because they were just very confident, very relaxed. I think we ended up coming out of the swim 3rd, 4th and 5th. They were both on my feet. I had one of the better swims that I'd ever had. Got onto the bike, and all I had to do was control a couple of the breakaways and shut them down. And I remember pulling a really great shifty on the Kiwis. One of the guys attacked, and I went with him, and I came in front of him, and I was like, "Come on, we got this!" And I braked like I was driving Miss Daisy coming into this U-turn, and I edged my way around the corner, and I was yelling, "Come on, come on!" And as we come around the corner, and the group just caught straight up onto us because I was blocking him. And it wasn't until like 3/4 of the way through the bike ride, I think they cottoned onto it. But by that stage, it was far too late. So they got off the bike, and the guys ended up running through for gold and bronze. And I sort of ran through. It was probably the best at my ability at that point for the amount of running that I'd done, and finished 11th spot, but was obviously satisfied with achieving what we set out to do.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. Oh, what's the distances for Olympic and Commonwealth Games?
So that was a 1,500 swim, a 40K bike ride, and a 10K run.
Yeah, I'm out. You lost me at the 1,500 swim.
Against most people as well.
I like a 25 meter pool because I can stop at the other end. The 50 meters.
Yeah. I haven't done a triathlon since I retired, so I'm kind of with you.
Haven't you?
No.
No, you're still looking sharp. That's all. Wow. What an amazing story. The fact that, and a lot of what we do, and we work with so many salespeople that are, running individual businesses, and they're concerned about their own approach and their own income. But to approach it as a team, if everyone's successful in the team, then it's just a much better outcome for everyone. And we really,
100%.
Amazing story. The ability, I guess, and to not be selfish about it. So, wow.
Yeah, and that's been my biggest learning in business. As I've progressed from an individual sport to where I am now, and I've always been someone that's kind of, I never considered myself the smartest or the strongest or the fittest guy out there, but I've kind of always considered myself the ability of grinding my way through, and I'll outlast everybody. And in business, it's just not possible. Maybe there's some businesses where you can kind of do that, but you're exponentially better by the people that are around you. And if you've got them bought into where you're going and you're just able to let them figure out the best way to go there, then you'll achieve so much more than you can on your own.
Yeah, and so, you fall straight into that category. Was it Roosevelt that said the harder I work, the luckier I get? In my old team, I said to people, lucky is not a word that we're allowed to use. Let's replace it with fortunate. Because even if someone walks through the door of the car dealership and they just buy a car on the spot, they're like, I was just lucky. I'm like, no, you weren't lucky. You were fortunate that happened, absolutely. But you were still prepared by being planned and trained and coached to execute what you needed to lock that deal down at the time. So it's just a fortunate situation, but you still have to do the work. Whether it takes 3 hours or 20 minutes or 3 years, the work still needs to be done.
Yeah, completely agree.
Awesome. I think, Stu, you've got one nice big hairy question for
I think Tomo's kind of answered it, but if you talked a little bit about this sense of team being your key focus from a business point of view, but if you could take one message from your history of success that you've taken into your business world, what would it be?
Yeah.
That's a big
Yeah, I guess what I would say to that, I guess, is don't be a passenger in your own life and where you want to go. My experience has been, and I've given this advice to a few people before, is you may not know where the eventual outcome is, but you've got to move in a direction. So you've got to have the ability to know which direction you want to go in. You'll more than likely not end up in that spot, but you need to make progression towards that. So you need to figure out where you want to go and why you want to go there, and start making moves towards that. Because I think that's where I've created my own luck, in that I've not known where I'm going to be going, but I've been moving in the direction which, there is a lot of gut feel and a lot of heart involved in that, but that's sort of, I think, where you find your strength too. So by following those passions and moving in a direction which feels right, and being a little bit doing that consciously. Otherwise, if you're just sitting along in the back seat and letting your subconscious drive you along, then I think that's where it can get really frustrating.
Yeah. I was given an analogy, I don't know, probably 35, 40 years ago, from a guy I would consider a bit of a mentor. And he said, you can sit in a car that's not moving and you can turn the steering wheel anywhere you want. You ain't going squat.
Yeah.
The car's got to be moving before turning the wheel makes a difference.
Yeah.
Get moving, get going.
Get going. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, and that's, I've found that's been a consistent theme in my story.
Yeah, beauty.
Wow, amazing, guys. Holy shit. Tomo, mate, you're an absolute legend. I love you. So thank you Mate, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today and provide such great insights for our listeners. I mean, we're all better for hearing your story. I think it's your contribution to what people are trying to do and how they can use that. It will be significant in their life. So, mate, I can't say thank you enough.
No, thanks for the chat, guys. Really appreciate it, and best of luck with the rest of the series.
Good on you, bud. Thanks, Tom.
To our listeners, we're all about just thinking and creating in our own world. So we wanted to take what we've heard today and learn from it and be better tomorrow. As we always say, activity equals results. And as Simon just said then, you just got to keep moving forward. You've got to keep going in the direction you need to. So as always, in your favorite podcast app, please give us a review and provide your feedback so we can continue to deliver valuable content. Hit the like, subscribe and share button too. If you want to have a conversation with Stu or I, just get in touch via stuandmarty.com or even facebook.com/Stu and Marty. So Stu, Tomo, thanks guys. You're absolute legends. Until next time.
Yeah, well done, Marty. Thanks, Tomo.
Thanks, guys. Good on you.
Yeah.